Welcome, everyone. It's the 9th of March, and it's yet another episode of Disruption Talks. Joining us today is Elif Kocaoğlu Ulbrich, the founder at Contextual Solutions. And I usually start with an introduction, but I almost broke my thumb trying to scroll through your LinkedIn and the many experiences that you have, by which I mean that I think it's best if actually we allow you to introduce yourself initially, because I've seen that there's a lot of initiatives, that there's a lot of journalism, that there's a lot of business work. So I wouldn't even dare to do it myself. So please welcome, and let's begin with a short personal introduction.
Thank you, Philip. It's great to be here, and thank you for allowing me to share my story. Just to briefly, talk about my background. I'm actually a trained lawyer. I practiced as a lawyer in Turkey, mostly focusing on banking and finance, and then moved to Germany around 11 years ago to study business and entrepreneurship and to become an entrepreneur eventually. And then found my way into fintech startups, which was very hyped back then. Started with Finnip, then moved to Kringle and Lendico, and then had a lot of different experiences there, and then found my own consultancy, Contextual Solutions, in Berlin in 2019.
So was any place your favorite? Because sometimes you have this one job that you remember with a special place in your heart for any reason, really, right? Not that it's better than anything else, just perhaps a personal favorite. I used to work in the beauty business and sell hair extensions. Nothing to do with what I do right now, but still something that I recall very fondly. I'm curious if one of the many experiences is something that you enjoyed the most.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, currently, of course, I really enjoy being self-employed and being in control of things and the learning curve. But before that, and this might come as a shock to even my colleagues there, Kringle was my favorite, actually. It was a very small payment startup, and we were a very close team, and we were working really closely. We were selecting everyone that were joining the team carefully, diligently, and that created an amazing working culture for quite some time. And it was such a joy to be there, to grow the business, to see, to learn, and to be in the middle of things and to see your impact on small things, basically, in a small startup.
Okay. All right. So we've had this long introduction and the path, how we got here, but here is Contextual Solutions. So I could do the boring thing of reading out what Contextual Solutions is described as on LinkedIn, but let's not do that. That's why we have you here. So what is Contextual Solutions?
We are a venture development and expansion agency, specialized in fintech, legal tech, and X-tech, you might call it. Basically, we help companies to build and scale and also expand into Germany and understand the German market and develop go-to-marketing strategies.
You mentioned X-tech?
X-tech, because when you talk about fintech, then the question arises around, okay, what is fintech really, or what can be categorized as fintech, right? So we are talking about, of course, the financial technology startups, the startups that usually serve in the financial industry. But then are we also talking about tax apps, for instance? They're not usually in the financial scene, right? Are they also fintechs? Or anyone who's providing payments, are they also fintech? So now this difference is getting a bit more blurry. It's really hard to differentiate what is fintech, what is regtech, and etc. Because also there are no legal or official definitions of these terms. That's why calling it X-tech makes it easier, because then we also can work with HR tech, with marketing tech companies, which we do, because it all narrows down to the methodology that you use and what you serve them and the outcome, so rather than what they work on.
Sure, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that term, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn. So I have this question, why this particular path, but I don't think that's the right question to ask. I mean, much rather, at what point did Contextual Solution contextualize in your head as, okay, so I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, time for Contextual Solutions? Because I'm sure it was the amalgamation of all of the wide and various experiences that you had, but at some point it must have clicked, right?
No, actually, it's a very right question. Both of them have a connection point, and you will see now. The thing is, as I mentioned, I was a lawyer. I was working in corporate. I was a banker before I moved to Germany and had a very different career path, very traditional, and then moved to the startups with different expectations, and then saw that things are not as the way they seem, and learned a lot, enjoyed it, and fell in love with the startup culture. But then also started getting irritated about all the mistakes that are repeatedly made because of the assumptions in the industry, because of some common beliefs that are wrong, and because of the pressure of the venture capital industry, basically. So it's top down. Basically, you're a startup, you need to raise funds. Then when you raise funds, then the investor wants you to go, X way or Y way. And then you're starting to lose track of what's important in the market of the user. But then you're actually, getting to the market to disrupt the industry, to, serve to the user, but then you're losing track of it. And then all the success story that you have accumulated in the first several years starts dissolving. And the product starts crumbling, etc., etc. Also around ego fights: who will be the face of the company, who will be more famous, who will be more rich. And I'm not saying this is for everyone, but it is very common. And I can see that you're nodding. It might remind you of some things that you've watched on Netflix, or some stories, or some things that you've read, on the media. But this is like a very common story. So watching this unfold in different companies, not only the companies that I work for, but also the companies that we were partnering with. Like, for instance, I was working for a company builder. Also, basically, I was able to watch a lot of companies grow. Then I saw that there were common mistakes, and I wanted to avoid them with the know-how that I accumulated, because I was able to see from legal to business and see the connection, and have realized that you cannot separate, like in a medical operation, what's going on with your body, right? So you have to look at it all holistically. You have to look at a startup holistically. And that's why I decided to found a company to look at startups holistically. So not just think about, okay, what's the name of this company, but starting from the first moment: who do we serve? What value do we provide? What problem do we solve? And then answer every question around the startup based on these values and mission.
Right. So essentially, having witnessed all of those instances or separate elements, it simply made sense to put them in a repetitive pattern of a life cycle, basically, just like you mentioned. First, there's the product, then there's the raise, then there's all of the issues with the product that come because you have money to spend on the product. So it makes a lot of sense the way that you introduced it. So right now, I'm reading on LinkedIn that there's 6 people on board of Contextual Solutions, right?
8.
8. Okay, you gotta update your LinkedIn then, because it's 133% increase in headcount, right? So you definitely want to put that there. So what does your day to day look like? Because there's one of you and there's 7 of others, but I'm pretty sure that you're the captain and you run the ship. So what does a day, or maybe a week is better, or more representative sample size for what is it like to run Contextual Solutions?
Another great question. I would rather call myself a project leader rather than a captain, because I think everyone in the team knows what they're doing and they're experts in what they do. And this is why they're in the team. I mean, as a small company, we cannot afford actually non-experts or people who just do blah, blah, right? So people that are in really know what they're doing, and we just communicate regularly, and, they just do their magic. I just, guide them in a way, show them what the customer need is or market need is. And coming back to my day, I basically wake up, and the first thing that I do is to basically look at all the newsletters that I subscribe to, and also all the news that also occurred while I was asleep, and in the US market and the other markets, because this is like a big indication of what would happen in our market, or giving tips and also just, creating learnings, right? So this is very important for us to learn what's going on, to be on top of things, not in just our market, the European market, but other markets as well. So reading all this, and then sitting down with my first cup of coffee, first of many cup of coffees, and just basically looking at my day. Okay, what do I have in front of me? And going through the list one by one, and then repeating this every day. In the evening, also looking at the list and checking the things that we've completed, and then looking at the things we couldn't, and asking ourselves why couldn't we complete this task, right? So very structured.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that there's the ambition for, just like 6 became 8, for 8 to become 80, right? Does Contextual Solutions have a ceiling of scale? Do you intend to stay boutique, or is it something that with repeated success will just grow over years?
We of course want to grow, because I think every company eventually has the idea or the mission to grow, right? That's why it exists. But we don't want to overgrow. As I said, my best experience was in a small and growing startup. So I want to keep that spirit, because I know once you start growing unproportionally, the culture changes, and you need to sacrifice some things. Not that it is impossible, but it's harder. So to maintain that balance and to have like a work-life balance, I think keeping the scale around, I don't know, maybe 60 people max would do, because we don't need so many people, since we have a lot of different partners. So for instance, we don't need a tech department, because we have partners like Netguru and other tech partners, right? We have law firm partners. We have other partners like us that are experts in other countries. So in the UK market, in the Spanish market, etc. So we just give them a call when we need it, work like a joint venture, and then dissolve. So, and this is our great added value. We call it no drama projects, because everyone is an expert. They just jump on the project. We just show our magic, but there's no there's no intention to suppress each other, to be more dominant, or to be more on the front side. Everyone just wants to deliver a great team, a great project, and then be out there as a team. So this is actually our USP, to have like basically a network of experts that are not employed by us, but that work with us.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that makes sense. Not only in theory, but we know in practice, just like you mentioned, that we are partners ourselves, both you and I, and by you and I mean Contextual Solutions and Netguru. We do have this strong network of partners, and I think that's only going to be a growing trend across companies, not only because it's this added benefit of you don't try to develop some sort of knowledge in-house, but rely on people who have been doing it for years. But also with the current economic climate, it's just more business savvy to not add the expenses and generate cost centers, but much rather look at someone and say, hey, you've already done it, so how about we just shake hands and come to some sort of agreement where everybody wins. So 2022, what was it like? What were you most proud of? Maybe there's something that you want to share that, sometimes people like sharing their mistakes. I'm not inviting that. I'm just opening the door. That's up to you.
2022 was very interesting, because so we work in different markets, but the markets that we work the most are in Germany, the Turkish market, the UK market. So these are markets that are very close to us, which means the developments really impact us. And all these markets have very different developments last year, which impacted us and the market as a whole. So we were, of course, closely observing the venture capital market, and also the startups, the innovation, the approach to innovation and the approach to risk, right? And we have seen a huge decrease in the innovation projects last year, like since after summer, basically, especially in Germany, because Germany, if the audience, like people from audience do not know, it has a very risk-averse culture, especially consumers, but also somehow entrepreneurs as well. And the mentality is to basically close the tap when there's a risk, which might or might not be true, depending on the situation, or correct. And of course, not knowing what will happen after the invasion of Ukraine and also the economic, downturn, a lot of entrepreneurs started, closing the taps, also because of the venture capital pressure, because investors told them to, okay, just shut it down, not the project, of course, but stop spending, stop hiring, and etc., which, of course, just spirals through the market and the network. And we've seen that happen. And we see that trend continuing, of course. So that was interesting from a market observation point of view, which then, of course, made us shift our direction more towards other markets, because then other markets became interesting since they don't have the same risk approach, right? In Middle East, in Turkey, they don't have the same risk approach. So an economic downturn doesn't necessarily mean that you would just, turn down the tap and stop, investing in innovation. Actually, this is exactly the opposite. When there's a risk, they tend to get in more. So we started working with more companies from Turkey and Middle East, and also other European Union companies. So more Mediterranean companies that have a different approach to risk. So this is a status quo for us. Then we started working on different products, which we'll hopefully announce this year, our own products. But the thing that we were most proud of was our the expansion of our partner network, of our expert network, and the way we collaborated with some of our competitors. So, for instance, we have a consultancy based in Frankfurt, which would normally be considered our competitor. But we started working on a project together. So it's a typical competition project. I mean, something that people always talk about, but never really do. Because when it comes to, sitting together with your competitor, it's always a bit, icky, right? But we had a totally different approach, and we started working together and have actually created outstanding results and decided to continue working together. So they were amazing in that. We published a report, a German fintech market report, which I'll also happily share with our audience here today. And we are going to continue working together, because this just makes sense. So it doesn't make sense that we are competitors and we just, look at each other and, annoy each other. But we work together, we create value together, and this is actually a great way of working for us.
It's a very interesting insight about both the risk aversion in your local geography and how you tackled that looking at other geographies. And yeah, I mean, I know that this is something that people are extremely tired of hearing, but the crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And as such, it's very true what you mentioned, that when times are tough, it's actually the ones who are bold enough to approach that risk and walk towards that dragon, so to say. And say, okay, if everybody else is slightly de-risking their spending, that means that there's less sharks in the same water. Maybe that's a blue ocean. Let's find out, right? So we spoke about 2022, 2023. Scary year, even in terms of just the weather. It's March and it's still snowing in Poland. So if that's any measure of how this year can be slightly different than the previous years, going back to business, we are seeing this in terms of all of the layoffs, the hiring freezes, the decreased amount of funding, or if funding is happening, it's happening in a down round. So companies are losing their valuation. So the previous investors aren't too happy, even if they have primary rights of dilution. It's challenging. So what are you the most excited in 2023 about? And the opposite side of the spectrum, what's the thing that makes you perhaps take a little bit longer to fall asleep at night when you look at our world of business and tech?
First, a comment about the weather. I know that your team is coming to Berlin next week for the forum, the Netguru forum. So wait until you come to Berlin and then complain about the weather. Just a remark,
I'm not complaining. I'm just observing.
Observe it when you come to Berlin, and then we'll have another chat. Then about 2023, actually what I said about the second half of 2022 is still valid right now. And starting from your second question, what keeps me up at night in a negative way is, of course, the development of the market, because we see a lot of companies going down, unfortunately. So some of them do not have their cash runway. Also because they have this extended cash runway after Corona. Some got loans, some got investments. And I'm not only talking about startups, but also corporates and SMEs and etc. And of course, we see a lot of them now, raising the red flag, right? Just saying, okay, we cannot do this anymore. And that is, of course, not a good, not giving a great message to all the other entrepreneurs out there, right? And also the approach to investments, because first-time startups, first-time entrepreneurs are having a hard time accessing capital, and this is especially true in countries like Germany and Austria and etc. So of course, this is breaking the will to innovate. This is calming down the market a bit, and it's a bit sad. Another thing is, of course, in Germany, especially the regulatory atmosphere. It's a bit tough. It became even tougher, especially since last year. And this is making the processes slow down, and again, breaking the will of the entrepreneur. So this is not something that you want to see. If you see the entrepreneurs being demotivated, then the whole market goes down, because, I mean, if you don't have any small startups that are, entering the market, then there's no, there's no vibrance in the market. So that's the negative thing. The positive thing is, like you said, every crisis has an opportunity. I also believe in that. So the fact that, of course, local entrepreneurs are a bit more introverted, a bit more calmer these days, doesn't mean that foreign entrepreneurs are. So a lot of foreign entrepreneurs will be entering the European market, not just the German market, but they will be coming. And this will, I think, really diversify the market. This will excite the market a bit, will make it a bit more interesting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But I think all this we will be able to observe after summer, because people are all in the waiting mood right now, seeing, okay, let's see how the winter will go, and then, let's start the projects again.
I think that's a very valid question I'm about to ask. Look at me patting myself on the back. So if I am to consider us being in Berlin next week, what is it going to be like when I'll be speaking to, let's say, a founder, executive at a scale-up, senior manager at an enterprise, all of those people in Berlin? What should I expect? What are they going to have in their hearts? What are they going to have in their minds? Who's going to be, out of those three personas, who's going to be the most relaxed? Who's going to be the most stressed? Just, give me some insights, since I'm going to be flying into Berlin on Tuesday. I'm actually going to be co-hosting this event with a friend of mine. So I want to, pick your brain a little bit, because you're there on the ground. Just give me some pointers. What do people feel like? What is it like over there right now?
So to clarify, you said startups, enterprise level CEOs, and what was it?
I just said like startup, scale up, enterprise, right?
Scale up. So... Okay. I think the most stress will be definitely the startup, the seed, pre-seed, because they have the biggest challenges with regards to raising, with regards to having access, because regulation is also a way to basically lobby, right? So when you're applying for a license, when you are of course trying to get by with BaaS providers and etc., you are lobbying a bit. You're basically demonstrating your value, your worth, the worth of your company. And for this, you need access. You need financial access. You need resource access. You need talent access. And as a startup, you're low on these things. So that's why you're the most stressed, because you're trying to pull a lot of things at the same time, like pull a lot of different strings, regulatory strings, investor strings, and etc. I think scale-ups are better, because once they reach this stage, if they have, if they can demonstrate a proof of concept or their first signs of profitability, they will get funded. Because in the end, venture capital is about profit, right? So they want to profit, and if they see some kind of a metric, some kind of a sign that you're giving away about your profitability, about your future success, they will invest in you. It's just harder if you're a first-time founder or like a small startup with an unproven business model, or if you're trying to play the long game of copycat models, so neobanks and etc. So if you're another neobank, there are many of these, right? So how are you going to differentiate yourself? You have to answer a lot of questions. So they will be the most stressed, definitely. Enterprise doesn't have to stress. They always have talents. They always have budget. So I don't think they will be stressed. But of course, they will be a bit more conscious, a bit more cautious, because I also see that enterprises and SMEs and corporates, they're also basically tying up their budgets. They're a bit more reserved in that sense and trying to do everything in-house or not doing anything fancy, let's call it these days, also with regards to software or products. But they won't be stressed, I would assume.
Okay, so let's focus on those stressed and slightly more stressed then, because I wanted to ask the common issue, the most common issue that your clients come to you with. Is it almost always connected to regulation? Is it rarely ever connected to regulation? Because I understand that regulation is a strong part, but it's just one of the pieces of the puzzle, right? So I would love to understand, given what you just shared about who's under the most stress, what are the issues that you can help solve them to de-stress their lives, and also to understand the dynamic of fintech in the DACH region. If we understand the organism, the environment in which it has to survive, I think that gives a complete picture. So that's what I'm asking for.
Definitely. I mean, there's several FAQs, let's call them, frequently encountered problems or challenges. And one of them is definitely regulation in Germany, because the German regulator, as opposed to FCA of England, for instance, is not fostering innovation. And they're very clear about it. They're saying openly also on their website, we are not here to foster innovation. We are here to, protect consumer and the market. That's it. So if you have an approach like this, and then you bring some startups who are trying to disrupt the market, who are trying to innovate the market, that is, there's a clash of goals, right? How do you align that? And the biggest problem there is, of course, aligning the expectation of the startup, because they come in thinking that they can change the market because they've read about the market, they have seen, I don't know, their big brothers, the Silicon Valley brothers, disrupt the market, and they think that they can do it in the DACH region, also in Poland too, because I know, like the Polish regulator is a bit conservative about, for instance, crypto topics and some other, business models. Same is also happening in Lithuania right now, Estonia right now. I mean, all European regulators are conserving up a bit, so they want to be cautious. They don't want to have another wire card. And in this environment, if you're a startup who is very agile, who wants to enter the market really, really quickly, then this is kind of killing the motivation. And so the biggest challenge for us to, of course, always align the expectations, saying, okay, this is how the market works. These are the timelines that you need to align. And we always see all this cautious approach as a great time to prepare. So if you know that the regulator will make you wait, the notary will make you wait, from company formation to your license application, or the same with BaaS right now. Even if you work with BaaS, you cannot enter the market immediately. They will have to do due diligence. You also have to prove your business model as if you're going through an audit. And this is a bit disappointing for a lot of startups. So we are trying to always align the expectation and say, look, yes, it is a bit disappointing that you cannot enter the market from today to tomorrow. But this is also a great chance to basically take a deep breath and basically realign your expectations, realign your market proposal, your business model, your entry strategies, and then, localize it according to the needs of the German market. So this is what we do a lot, and also, create them market entry strategies and, business model, or like user research, and it's all these things around, like all these topics that help them prepare for the market better.
Okay, and one last question on regulation, and then we can just kill that topic for now. When I was listening to you, and you mentioned Germany being very purposeful, because sometimes there are those allegations of a specific governmental regulatory approach being just strict, right? Or just being conservative for the sake of conservatism. What you mentioned here seems like a very purposeful way of conducting this by the German government, which you mentioned on the website, that consumers first, right? It's not that, innovation, this, that. It's not even that they have an opinion on innovation per se, but that regulation has to always cater to the consumers, and only then can it allow to blossom in the way that we've seen innovation blossom, sometimes uncontrollably, admittedly. So I'm thinking, is it a good thing at the end of the day? It's just what I'm feeling is like I want my doctor or my lawyer to go through a lot of exams and to check a lot of boxes, because once they are a practicing medical professional or they are supposed to defend me in court, you want to make sure that they are also confirming everything with regards to regulation. Would that be a correct, more or less, metaphor between the approach of the government in Germany to making sure that nothing goes uncontrollably, even if it stifles the overall innovation?
I mean, if you ask my personal opinion or my personal, position, I'm right in the middle. I don't like this over ambitious, over innovative approach. Although I support innovation with all my heart, I live and breathe innovation. But I also don't like uncontrolled innovation because of the lack of education in the market. And this lack of education can become more of a problem if, like, the bigger the market gets. So maybe you can control it in the Netherlands. But for instance, we have seen a lot of examples in the US that this innovation literally costs lives, right? So there's gamified wealth tech apps like Robinhood, and I think even Robinhood, they had all these allegations about basically not misguiding the consumer, but because the consumers weren't properly informed about the impact of trading in the stock market, and the ease of this trading, right? And what it could cost them. And there was even a 19-year-old teen, I think,
Yeah.
who traded and then misunderstood the app and like committed suicide. This is super dramatic. And maybe you cannot, extend this example. Maybe it was one example, maybe it was 5. But if it's costing lives, whether it's 1 or 5, doesn't matter. Then there is the need for intervention, right? Then you need a bit of control. Then it means that, okay, maybe it has spread too much. Maybe it has spread, a bit out of control. The same goes in the UK with buy now, pay later regulations. This is why they're so strict on regulations these days, because a lot of people thought, oh, if I get, BNPL, I will just pay it easily in long term, not actually thinking about whether their financial health is available for that. I mean, do you really need the second, third bag? I don't know, it's your personal decision. But of course, if it's made easier without any warnings, and I'm not saying I'm against BNPL, of course, this has to be there for as a payment option, but it has to have the relevant warnings, the relevant education, not just the footer, a small disclaimer on the footer or something where you don't see, but really show it. Okay, you buy this, but these are the financial and social impacts of this. So really, you have to decide for yourself if you can really afford it or not. So that's why I think this approach, like too innovative, like too uncontrolled, is not good. But too controlled is also not good, because then you have this fear, and that wouldn't foster innovation. My personal approach would be having like a regulatory body that is like welcoming people, welcoming entrepreneurs to the country in a controlled way, looking at them, welcoming them, informing them, so that they're also not scared of regulations, so that they are, on top of regulations from day one. And basically, it's like a sandbox, but more educational, because the current sandboxes, and we also don't have one in Germany, are very selective. So they only focus on the most innovative, most disruptive business models, most interesting ones. This is great. But the other ones are entering the market anyway. So, why not also take a look at them, educate them, help them, and also then prevent a lot of these data privacy leaks, a lot of like consumer problems, just by, forcing all the startups to educate their customers first. And then you also have a controlled approach of, you see who's there, who's not.
So touching upon what you just mentioned about this education, convincing, or trying to redirect someone into the right way, how do you do that personally as Contextual Solutions? We know from experience that there is nothing more difficult than a founder who is absolutely hell-bent on, I have conceived, visualized, and projected the way that I will execute my plan. This is a solution for my customers. I understand it, I know it, and this is what I'm sticking to. But sometimes, I'm sure you've seen this plenty of times, there is just sometimes 3, sometimes 1, sometimes 23 pieces of advice that you just know for a fact that if the founder, let's say the fintech stakeholder in the founder's startup, if they were convinced about that, it would be helpful. So I'm curious, because on your website you mentioned design thinking, workshops, a number of other ideation methods. What have you seen works best, but not only as, this works best, but the way that you approach people that sometimes have, ideas are very personal, right? So I think you understand what I'm trying to ask here.
No, I do actually, and I really appreciate the question because it's such a right question. And when I actually first saw the question, I was thinking, oh, I found my business soulmate. This person who wrote this, really understands the struggles I'm having. It is true. And I have to admit here, which is not something that I really admit a lot, that when I first started the company, I thought, I know the keys, I know the solutions to the problems people are having. I know how not to make them fail. I know how to avoid their mistakes. I will sell this to them and they will love it. They didn't love it. Like you said, when a founder is obsessed with the idea, and I call this possessed, it's like, like a zombie takes over your body or something. They become possessed with an idea and they don't even want to hear the smallest, not even criticism, the reality check. And, their idea might not really fit with the fundamentals of the market. Sometimes you just see it and they just don't want to hear it. And we've seen that this doesn't work, telling them, because then they take you as the enemy. They think that, okay, she's challenging me. Who is she to challenge me with my great idea? But I think this is not the right mentality to become a founder. You have to always look for the market need. However, that's not common, like you said. That's why we changed our approach and move more towards education. That's why we actually produce a lot of content. We go to a lot of events and people don't understand it. You're a consultant. Why are you producing so much content? Why are you writing so much? My purpose is education. My purpose is to show, to put it on paper. If I can, save one founder from these expensive mistakes, these waste, then we would have like a happier founder in the market that could create like maybe more valuable products. And I'm not saying not all founders are like this, but like you said, there is a trend because they just become possessed with the idea. And that's why, as I said, we have this education. But the second thing is also the filtering that we do, because we don't work with everyone. And I think that's okay. We are not McKinsey, we are not EY. Everyone who wants to have a non-hands-on approach or a generic approach or who wants a pat in the back for whatever idea they have, they can go to these great consultancies which have great research, but no real, in-depth analysis. So you can go to these ones, and then you're probably not our customer anyway. But if they come to us, I know that they want a hands-on approach, they want a reality check, and then we also provide it with content, with education, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay, and just to give credit where credit is due, your business soulmate, I am just the midwife of this conversation, because the talking points and the idea for the episode was generated by our only Zosia Musiał, the executive producer of Disruption Talks. So I dare not take the credit and interfere with the soulmateship between the two of you. Thank you for sharing all of that and all of those insights. So I didn't want to ask you any more regulatory questions, and I also seen that there's one in the comments, but maybe just so we come to some sort of middle ground, is there any legal advice that fintech founders should be aware of, follow, or consider even before they become founders? Because, before you say, I will do this, you most likely have a situation where you evaluate, okay, so the market's like this, the users like that, all of the legal hoops that I have to jump through are this, and that. Legal advice for fintech founders is what I'm looking for.
Of course, this is not official legal advice. Kidding. So I can give one piece of advice to basically have regulation always at the core of the business. And always, especially in the DACH market in Poland, in continental Europe, basically, but also in other areas as well, don't let your intern do the regulatory research and just base your model on that, which is something that I see and I find it ridiculous. Really talk to a lawyer, talk to a qualified lawyer, and not only talk to a lawyer, because sometimes the lawyers do not get your business models, like they're not so, on top of tech or, or the business. Talk to other founders, talk to lobbying organizations. I mean, if you're entering a country, the first thing you should do would be to talk to the lobbying organizations, because there are always some sort of lobbying organizations that would give you some advice. Talk to the investment agencies that would give you free legal advice, and then build up from there. Even if you cannot afford like a professional legal opinion, but if you cannot afford a professional legal opinion, then maybe postpone it until you can, because because it doesn't make sense to be half in, half out. Otherwise, you'll just be spending a lot of time. You'll be frustrated. Yeah. You cannot actualize your project, thinking that you can do, but then in 6 months you figure out, oh, there was this regulatory hurdle. And it might not even be a hurdle, but it might be a game changer in terms of process, in terms of UX. So always keep it in heart of your operations of your model, and always keep an eye on it very closely.
Sure. I mean, what you said makes a lot of sense. You definitely don't want to be in the position where you're going, Your Honor, but the idea was so good, I just didn't have the money, right? So that's number one. And number two is that, of course, entrepreneurs oftentimes think that when there's two co-founders, one becomes the CEO, the other one becomes the COO or the CFO. The second hat that they wear is chief legal counsel, because they're just so good with Google. So, fingers crossed, but also, I mean, that's why we have startup insurance. That's precisely why we have startup insurance.
Hopefully that's why they have it, because some also don't have it. And don't subsidize, especially in DACH. I mean, I'm saying again, because I cannot stress it enough, in DACH, in Poland, in these countries where regulators are a bit on top of things and a bit diligent. I'm not saying the regulators are not so diligent in other countries, but they're a bit more approachable. But in these countries, they're not about inviting people to the country and saying, come to our country and become entrepreneurs. And if you have this kind of approach, this diligent check, they will be looking at you from top to toe. Just really invest in this. Don't look at ChatGPT. Don't allow ChatGPT to create your contracts. Just do what needs to be done.
Or simply use Contextual Solutions for all your needs as a fintech founder, right?
Thanks.
I mean, goes without saying. I have to, I'm sorry, regulation again, but perhaps not about opinions about the current regulation state, but rather looking at the case study of Wirecard, because it's definitely different for you to be there in perhaps not the epicenter, but very close to it, compared to just me reading the news or listening to a podcast or something. So
yes, I saw this coming. So yes, Wirecard is a very special case. It's a particular case. And a lot of people ask, okay, if Germany is so diligent with regulations, how come this happened? Well, first and foremost, we are all human. Regulators are human. And it's such a big scheme of things that, you would never believe that this would happen. Even I personally didn't believe that this would happen, because I thought it's just so big and ridiculous that I don't believe, such a scheme had occurred at first, of course. But then you're reading this, and then you read into the books, and this amazing book by Financial Times journalist, then I believe, and also, watching the documentaries about it, you see how deep it was, how big it was. And it's, again, human error. It's greed. A lot of people greed. And then you always believe, believe the best in people somehow. And you think, no, he wouldn't do this, right? So this is one thing. And the second and the most important thing why this happened is because of Germany's hunger for innovation. I mean, yes, the German regulator isn't fostering innovation, or it's its first task. But they also want innovative companies. They also want a German brand. The same for Europe. I mean, why is there PSD2, right? They want a European brand. They want a European brand that could compete with PayPal, and that's why they're enabling or giving these opportunities to smaller companies to grow and scale, so that they have a European brand that they can promote, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal. The same with Germany. They wanted a German brand, and Wirecard was that. It was the poster child. It was there for so long, had great relationships. So I think nobody thought about questioning the legitimacy of business or thought about actually seeing through things, because you also have like these brand names like EY there, and you say, okay, EY is auditing. I don't have to worry. So everyone is basically throwing the ball at someone else, and then it's like musical chairs. Who was left at last? And I think this is the reason.
I mean, that's the thing. I understand the musical chairs analogy. I understand throwing around this hot potato of responsibility. But then again, that's pretty much what you expect when you hire an EY. You pay money to have this peace of mind, and it's a little bit like an insurance policy. It's, I'm not good at accounting. I'm not going to do my own accounting. I'm going to hire an accountant because I don't want to go to jail. I'd like to pay my taxes, and I'd like to spend my time where it's due. So I'm always curious how with such, it's not weak elements, it's not weak stakeholders, right? Like EY wasn't created yesterday. This wasn't their first or their second or their 100th audit. It was, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it's hundreds of thousands total in terms of all the audits. So it's super interesting how it actually went. You mentioned that there's a book that is worth reading. Do you remember the title?
I can write it in the comments after we publish it. It's
sure.
It's by the Financial Times correspondent who revealed this scandal. It has something with Wirecard in the name. I'm really bad with names, sorry, but I will post it later.
Okay. I think it's Dan McCrum, who's the
Dan
author. Money Man, a hot startup, $1 billion fraud, a fight.
Yes, excellent book.
Okay, so we'll drop it in the comments anyway. But now, if we could take away from this meta perspective on regulation and actually look at this from the perspective of the founder, other than going to Contextual Solutions, which is the answer to every question that we've been asking today, how do you stay on top of changing regulation? And I don't only mean you, the founder, but I'm also curious, how do you do it? Because like you mentioned, you've expanded geographically. So perhaps this question shouldn't be asked only with regards to regulation, but with regards to everything. You cannot be an expert in everything, but you have to have an idea. How would you recommend this with your personal approach and with a founder to stay on top of things? And I'm not looking for the obvious answers of, Google, read, subscribe to newsletters. I'm pretty sure that there are some special tricks that you can recommend.
Well, reading definitely helps. I mean, that's why I start my day with reading and all these newsletters. But what is more important to me and what helps more is personal connections. So I try to have personal connections in every geography, with regulators, with investment agencies, with whomever. I take them out for lunch, for coffee, not to bribe them or something, but to get their perspective, to get the fresh news. Because, of course, I'm trying to follow a lot of different markets, but I can only see it from from my own perspective where I sit. But the dynamics of the market of, for instance, the Estonian market or the Lithuanian market is very different and could be perceived very differently if you're local. That's why you should always talk to locals, always have your eye on locals. I travel a lot, and every time I travel, I try to invite someone I don't know, that I haven't met before, to lunch or coffee or something, get their perspective, ask them, their perception, and basically be on top of things. Because when you talk to people and experts also, and listen to them, not talk about yourself and how amazing you are, but really listen, just sit for 20 minutes and listen to them nonstop. You would get amazing insights that you can never get by reading or or I don't know, subscribing to newsletters. So basically find key people and just talk to them, and of course then explain your position, help them too. I think it's like a win-win game.
Okay. So overall, not only call Contextual Solutions, but also come to Disruption Forum by Netguru to expand your network locally and make sure that you have all of the friends that you need so you can call them instead of Googling just with Google or ChatGPT. I understand completely what you're saying about building this network, and it's interesting because sometimes you would assume that a founder just has their own network and they rely on this, but I think it's a continuous exercise to maintain it and keep expanding it, because it's like a separate full-time job if you want to do it correctly.
100%, and not go through one vertical. So if you're a startup founder, don't just go chase investors. Also chase artists, also chase other people who can give you like reality check, who can give you different perspectives on things, on your product, on your idea, right? But also who might eventually like you and then start recommending you to people. And you never know who people know or who they are, where they're a part of or something, which association. And then amazing things happen, if you just have this open-minded approach of meeting people and just being interested in what they do and where they're coming from and learning. And then you see actually the business is not done via emails, but via WhatsApp and calls, because then people feel, close to you, they write you, and this is how you close businesses, not by cold calling or emailing or saying, hey, we have blah, blah, blah. So expanding network is, I think, key to any kind of business, any kind of success, also corporate work, but people usually underestimate it, either go for the top ones or go very salesy, try to sell something, but instead build relationships, learn these people, and then you can work now or later. You never know.
Yeah. I think people need to remember, just like you said, that it's a repeat business game. And by repeat business, I don't necessarily mean business itself, as in transactions, invoices, contracts. I mean that the person with whom you're shaking the hand for the first time right now might be founder of a startup that's not headed for success, but their next venture might, or they'll go into a job, or they'll change their current job, or they'll get promoted. So you definitely want to play the long game, and you definitely want to approach it with no expectations, just like you mentioned. So no sale, but rather develop it such that when the occasion arises, it just comes to you organically.
Definitely.
So we are 54 minutes into our episode, and that leads me to slightly begin wrapping it up. We have one question that we always ask our guests that has nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with fintech, and everything to do with giving the gift of education to all 12-year-olds in the world. So you wave your magic wand, and after the abracadabra, every 12-year-old is given access to the gift of knowledge on a specific topic, a specific area that you choose. There's no right or wrong answer. There's just your answer. And we've heard emotional intelligence, we've heard design thinking, we've heard being assertive, we've heard logical thinking, critical thinking. We've heard don't teach the kids anything. They have enough on their plate already. So what do you think yourself?
For me, it's an excellent question. Really wonderful. And I would personally choose to teach personal discovery to kids, because I think our personal discoveries are limited to the roles that our families force on us, the roles that the society or the neighborhoods that we live in, the school. So the people that you encounter, they put you in a box. And then eventually you start also getting in that box, because people think of you in a certain way, and then you stop questioning. I would, if I could, teach everyone to question their role in life, question their skills, and basically live according to their skills and not to the expectations of the society. Then I think we'll all be happier humans. We'll all create, better output. And if you're talented in music and if you're in finance, that's a waste. Yeah. No matter how successful you are, that's a waste. but you probably allowed yourself to be put in a box by someone, or you put it, you got in there yourself, which is a bigger shame. And I see a lot of individuals, because I've done a lot of career change, and that makes, I think, my path interesting. A lot of people telling me, how do you do it? How do you, change? Like there's, like you said, a magic wand or something magical happen. I just realized one day I don't want to live according to the rules of the society, and I will live my own life, because I have one life. It's short. So, I mean, I'll just do whatever I want, right? As long as I stay in the rules, the ethical rules of the society. So just do it, just discover yourself, and I don't know, just challenge the limits of the schools. The teachers that you encounter might also not be very empathetic, very understanding. They might not push your skills further. Your friends might say you cannot do it, but you can do it, really, and just try it. And don't, just, I don't know, put your headphones, your noise canceling headphones to the rest of the world, and carve your own path.
Absolutely. That's an answer that I like a lot. So yeah, kids, play to your strengths. Elif, thank you so much for today. It's been, if it's measured by the times that I've smiled, a great episode, and I've seen you smiling a lot as well. So once again, thank you for today. I also wanted to remind what you just already mentioned in this episode, is that next week there is the Disruption Forum happening in Berlin on the 15th of March. So of course you can see it all across our socials. It's going to be once again in the comments. I think you are not on site at that time, so we won't be having the opportunity to meet. But I'm there until Saturday. So whenever you come back, if you have the chance, I'd love to, make this online meeting an offline meeting.
Definitely. I'll fix that. And thank you for the lovely conversation. It was a pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours. So thank you, and thank you to your audience, and see you next week and every week in the future with something disruption from Netguru. See you soon.